Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host. And for this episode, I'm interviewing Cheryl Krauter, author of the book Surviving the Storm, a workbook for telling your cancer story. And for those of you following along who are interested, you can go over now to the Amazon link in the description below the video and check out or get a copy of her book. So, Cheryl, welcome to AuthorStory. Thanks lots for being our guest.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate being here with you.
Ah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, Cheryl, first off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your author story?
Well, this is a book that I never dreamt I would ever write because it's about cancer survivorship. And if you had told me a decade ago that I would be working in the field of cancer
Right?
as a psychotherapist, that I would be writing a book for for cancer survivors, their partners, their friends, and their families,
Right?
I would have looked at you with great doubt in my mind. So it grows out of my own experience with cancer.
Right.
In 2007, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive breast cancer, which had jumped into my lymph nodes,
Wow.
and went into a very grueling treatment,
Okay.
and finished that, and very glad to be here. And after I finished that treatment, again, as a psychotherapist myself, and one that's always been interested in people and how they process things and their stories,
Right?
I felt that there was not a place for people to have the opportunity to tell the story, to discover your story, to explore your story.
Hmm.
And so that's how this book came about. I decided, through my own needs and wants, I thought, every time I am at a conference or I do a group, people are just bursting, which is why I appreciate the title of this program, AuthorStory, to tell their stories.
Hmm.
And in order to process the trauma, to go through and move beyond what's happened, I find that telling your story perhaps over and over until you're ready then, okay, I've told that story, I've finished that chapter, and now I really want to go on to the next one. So I feel like that's the value of storytelling in this area.
Cool. And you mentioned you're, sorry, a psychotherapist, right?
Yes, I am.
For how long have you been practicing psychotherapy?
I've been practicing psychotherapy for nearly 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
I know, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. So, if I might ask, did your training as a psychotherapist help you out in any way when you got cancer, when you got diagnosed with cancer?
Absolutely, because my education as a psychotherapist is in existential humanistic psychotherapy.
Okay.
So that's a type of therapy that focuses on the whole person
Hmm.
and your potential, your natural drive toward authenticity.
Hmm.
So that's been a practice that I have been involved with for, again, all these 40 years.
Right.
And I would say the other aspect that really helped me was that I have practiced mindfulness meditation for 34 years. So I feel both of those practices and ways of being really helped me be with what was going on and, as best as possible, not fight against it, but go with it.
Go with it. Okay, I
Yeah.
got that. But I mean, when you were first diagnosed, I'm sure it must have been a shock to you. Did you have any idea that you would go with it at that time, or did you like think, oh, this is a real bummer?
Yes, exactly. I like the way you put that. It's such a shock because it came out of left field, and the type of cancer I had was really not it wasn't common to someone like me.
Hmm.
So it was a total shock, and the feeling that I have, and I feel like most people in that moment of diagnosis feel like, no, you have the wrong chart. This isn't me.
Right.
How can this be happening? And you're right, Alex, because at first you're not thinking about your story. You're not thinking about, well, what's going to happen next. What happens at that point is you really hit the ground running. I
Right.
feel like this is the experience for most people. You're all of a sudden you're just propelled into this world of doctors and scans and chemotherapy, radiation, all these treatments happen. And so at that point, I'm just trying to survive. I think we're all just trying to survive. Let's just get through this. So it's not a time really when you're reflecting a lot. I think that's a really good point you're making. Yeah,
Okay, but
that happens later.
yeah, I mean, but reflection and the meditation, all those things that you got trained in, that eventually helped, I presume.
Well, the meditation and again, my long work as a psychotherapist helped as I was going through the process, particularly if I was in an MRI machine and I could really go into myself in a deep way.
Right?
During chemotherapy, during those infusions, I could close my eyes, I could go inside myself and find my own ground.
Hmm. Oh,
And that was invaluable to me. I was very grateful I had that background.
all right. Definitely, yeah, and that's pretty good. So, if I may ask, Cheryl, how long did it take before you finally went into remission?
You know, that's a really interesting question, Alex, because there's many different theories and ideas about when you go into remission, when you begin survivorship.
Right?
Some medical sites or tell you that you're a survivor the moment you go into diagnosis, which I don't agree with at all.
Right?
For me, I felt my survivorship began with the end of treatment when the scan came back clear
Right?
and everything looked okay.
Right?
But then you're followed up. You know, as people who've had cancer, we're followed up
Yeah.
at least for a full year. So I could be declared in remission, or a person could be declared in remission once they have finished treatment, and then they're what they call NED, no evidence of disease.
Right?
Oh, good, phew, I'm in remission, here we go.
Right?
But most people don't feel that. And it's a really interesting place to be with people, is to say, you know, do you feel like a survivor? Do you feel like you're in remission?
Mhm.
Or when did you feel that way? Do you feel that way? So I think it's very personal when a person actually experiences like, okay, I'm in remission
Mhm.
at this point. Very personal.
Okay, so remission then is more of a personal thing rather than, this is it. Yeah, cancer's gone. You're definitely in remission.
Well, that would be what, for instance, your diagnosis might be at that time, or what a doctor or an oncologist might tell you. But then, you know, you walk out of that office, and then you're back in you know, your own big real world,
Hmm.
facing your life and facing that, boy, that cancer came out of left field, because, you know, cancer's a real pesky disease. It's really shocking most of the time.
Right?
And now what do I do? It seemed to occur without my knowledge. You know, could that happen again? There's, of course, a tremendous fear of recurrence.
Right?
And actually, they usually give people what they call distress screening forms after you've finished your treatment, sometimes at the beginning and sometimes throughout. But on those screening forms, when they add up all the different numbers, statistically, the number one concern is living with uncertainty.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I got that. I got that. So, Cheryl, let's talk facts and figures for a moment, if I may, and if you do have these facts and figures about how many people in the United States do have cancer right now.
You know, I'm not sure how many do right now. Let me look here for a second. I do have in the book the survivors. Let's see. See if I can find. You know, I'm not finding those statistics in the book right now.
Like, is it really prevalent? How prevalent or how rare is it?
Well, I mean, the statistics say, you know, that 1 out of 2 men will get a cancer diagnosis in their lifetimes. 1 out of 3 women. So it's prevalent, but however, what's really good news is the numbers of survivors and those people who are living with cancer is growing.
Hmm.
And that's because the early detection and the monitoring and the treatments have gotten more sophisticated, which is now meaning that, for instance, myself, I was told that had I been diagnosed even several years before I was diagnosed with the kind of cancer I had,
Yeah.
I would have survived.
Wow.
So just in those few years, since when I got diagnosed before, there were treatments that were helpful. And in the last decade, since I had the type of cancer that I had, they've actually changed the protocol, and now more people are surviving, and actually without some of the what I would call collateral damage from the treatments.
Right.
So many types of cancer, people are surviving, or again, the kinds of treatments that they have, they're living with cancer. So that they're not free of cancer, they're not in remission, but they go on and they live their lives to varying degrees of how they feel.
Right. Okay. So I got it. You don't have the stats then on what the most prevalent form of cancer is, who the particular age group where cancer is most likely to appear, stuff like that, or do you have those?
Well, I mean, the most prevalent cancers, are lung cancer and breast cancer and prostate cancer.
Right.
In terms of age, I mean, older people who they're calling it the silver tsunami, actually, because of the baby boomers in the United States.
Right.
People in their 60s, when you get older is when oftentimes, I like to say, when the parts start falling off,
Okay.
and people get cancer. But what's really alarming, and I find very, very sad, is some of the younger people who are getting cancer. And, they're looking, researchers, thank goodness, are looking at, what is going on. There's numerous young women, like in their late 20s, their 30s, who get breast cancer. They have young children. And often this group, their prognosis isn't as good.
Right.
The younger you are, the prognosis is not as good. And again, it's very individual. But there's really no, it's like this age group, except for older, because when you get older, things happen and you get sick.
Right. True. And that's interesting to note that it's kind of like, as you mentioned, it's kind of like worse if you got this thing when you're younger compared to, say, if you got this thing when you were older. Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. So next, Cheryl, the book. For the benefit of those of us who are not aware what it's all about, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. It's a workbook, and again created because I wanted to have an accessible book for people who perhaps didn't have access to groups, to resources where they could come and talk to people. Maybe they aren't offered this, or maybe they just don't have it, or maybe they prefer to do this on their own. So the book presents a humanistic, psychological perspective on how you can support yourself. And it offers a narrative structure. It's divided into the survivors, the patients themselves, the partners. There's a section for the partners, a section for the family members. There's a section for children, because oftentimes the community around the patient is neglected. And all of these people, and I'm sure there are people listening whose lives have been touched by cancer through a partner or a loved one.
Right.
And oftentimes there's no place for them to go to really express what they've gone through.
Right.
So I created a book for people who really need to tell the story of how they've been touched by cancer. And there's a numerous cognitive behavioral books, resources out, which are very, very valuable. But for some of us who prefer a more narrative approach, there wasn't much. So that was created out of that need, I felt. So the book presents, again, a narrative structure. It doesn't tell you what you should eat. It doesn't tell you how you should exercise, what you should think and feel, but more introduces a contemplative perspective. And in that way gives readers a pragmatic structure to tell this unique story of surviving and living with cancer.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting. And I think you mentioned that, if someone had asked you, like years back, would you write a book on this? And you would have said no.
Yeah, right. You kidding me?
Yeah. So was there a particular aha moment when you thought, I should write this book. People should have this. This would help a lot of people out. Or did it just, progress, evolve, and into the workbook that it is?
That's a really great question. I really thought about this deeply, because I knew it was a need from my own experience and from listening to others. I knew this was a need. And then what I needed to really myself reflect upon is, if I do this, this is going to keep me in the world of cancer. This is going to keep me in the medical world. This is going to keep me present with all this trauma. And I really deeply thought about it. Could I do this? Is this something that I have the energy, I have the strength and the wherewithal to be with? And so one day, I remember it really clearly. So it was sort of an aha along with a period of reflection.
Okay.
It almost felt like, you know what? I got the call, and I can pick up the phone or not, But I decided at that moment, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to answer this.
Hmm. Okay. And if I may ask, how easy was it for you to write the workbook out? I mean, were there any particular challenges you faced?
Well, writing a book is challenging.
Hmm.
I
But
was working at the same time I was writing it, so I felt like I had two jobs.
okay.
But this book has really been, for me, a labor of love.
Mm.
It feels like, again, the calling was what propelled me throughout it.
Hmm.
I have a background as a poet,
Okay.
so I have included a lot of poetry in the book. I've been told by people who have read it and reviewed it, said, it has a very poetic feel to it.
Right.
So it was challenging, but also incredibly gratifying
Mm.
to write it. And Alex, I have this image that keeps occurring to me, particularly when I delivered it and it really went out of my hands. It was no longer belonged to me.
Okay.
Story that I see a pair of hands holding this book.
Hmm.
That's my image, and that's my want.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I got that. So, Cheryl, in your experience, and if you conducted these in your interviews with any other cancer survivors, what's the worst thing anyone can do, sorry, when they are diagnosed with cancer?
Can you? I'm not quite sure. Can you tell me, like,
Like,
what's the worst they could do if they're diagnosed?
no, like me, I went to the doctor today, and I found out the doctor tells me, you've got cancer, dude. And so,
Yikes, you say.
what's the worst thing I can possibly do, or think, or feel, or something like that?
Well, I'm not sure about the worst thing, but what occurs to me is to give up hope.
Okay.
Like, it's hopeless. I'm going to give up.
Hmm. Okay, I got that.
The other thing, though, I would say on the opposite side of that
Hmm.
is oftentimes people with cancer, and it's very unique to people who are diagnosed with cancer,
Hmm.
are told, you got to fight, you got to have a positive attitude. If you don't, you'll die.
Hmm.
And I think the worst thing you could also do, there's two worst things. You could either give up, or you could also become so pressured by this, you have to be positive all the time,
Right.
that it's exhausting.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, what's the best thing someone can do then when they are diagnosed? I mean, positive attitude helps, but you noted it could get somewhat stressful.
It's very stressful. It's very grueling. And I think the best thing that people can do is find ways that they can be supported.
Mm.
I have interviewed numerous people, and my practice now is usually over about half people in a varying degrees of a cancer diagnosis.
Right.
I would say the hardest and the worst place is for people who are isolated.
Hmm.
People have no one to talk to. People have no one to support. And this group, I really feel tremendous compassion for.
Right.
So if you can find people who can support you, talk about how you're feeling. Of course, it's important to choose people who you can talk to, who are going to be able to understand it, because oftentimes people can be really freaked out by your cancer. So
Right.
they back away, they look horrified, they say all the craziest and weirdest things.
Right.
So
Right.
you can find even just one person that you feel, that person is with me. They got my back. I would say that's really, really important.
Okay, I got that. So I guess it makes sense then that the best thing someone close to that person who has been diagnosed can do is to really just to support that person, just to be there, just to help them out whenever they need it.
Right. And I think what you said in that sentence that's the most important is just to be there.
Mm.
I think we all give ourselves a lot of pressure. Oh, what's the right thing to say? What's the best thing to do? And honestly, sometimes if someone just sits next to you and they just say, tell me how you feel, and then they just listen, that's just really a gift.
Hmm. Okay. All right, I got that. Okay, cool. So, Cheryl, you noted that this is a workbook. I mean that makes it pretty unique in itself from other books in the market on the topic of cancer.
Yes.
Other than that, is there anything else that you might point out that makes someone think, I really should get this book?
I think, as I mentioned before, that this book provides an option that is different from the support group and the medical models of treatment,
Right.
which are all fine. But if you're someone that relates more to a narrative, to a humanistic viewpoint, then this is going to be where you're going to want to go, because it offers a place for you to discover who you are. It doesn't tell you what you should do or feel.
Right.
It offers you the chance to explore, to tell your story, to tell it again, and the questions in the workbook, they're prompts for people, so it tells you, what was it like when you first got diagnosed? Some of the questions, like you asked me, this book gives people a chance to answer those questions and to look at them, rather than, again, it's not a memoir. It's not, I mean, although my story is in it, and it does offer stories of other people,
Right.
but it's more about, you tell your story. So that's very unique and different from the other books that are out there.
Cool. Fantastic. Okay, so Cheryl, let's say you met up with someone who has been recently diagnosed with cancer, or is close to someone who has been recently diagnosed with cancer, and you had only enough time to tell him or her one thing about how to manage the situation. What would be that one thing you would tell that person, and why?
Let me think for a second. I would first say that you need to take yourself off the hook, that you need to manage what's going on.
Okay.
Give yourself space, give yourself time, give yourself a lot of room just to feel what you feel, and know that no matter what you feel, what you think, what's going on with you, it's not negative, it's not positive, it's just where you are, and allow yourself just to be where you are, because by taking one breath and one step in front of the next, you'll get to where you need to go.
Right. Okay. Well, good words of advice right there. So, Cheryl, in the last few minutes of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire our listeners, on any topic at all?
Well, I just would like to offer out to people who are struggling with life-threatening illness, whether it be cancer or any life-threatening illness,
Right.
that just to acknowledge really what a rough road it is, and how hard they're working, and how courageous. I just want to say you're so courageous for just getting up in the morning. And oftentimes, we're not rich and famous when we get cancer.
Right.
We can't go off to the health spa and have beautiful food delivered to us. We're living our lives. We got kids, and we got to get them off to school, and we're trying to figure out the financial. It's just so much. And so I just want to give a shout out to everyone and their families and their partners and their friends who are coping and dealing with a cancer diagnosis, and just say, just have a lot of compassion for yourself, because you deserve it.
Okay, right. Cool. So those are great words of wisdom right there. Okay, so in closing then, the book is Surviving the Storm, a workbook for telling your cancer story. The author is our guest, Cheryl Krauter, and you can find it on the following websites. You can find it on Amazon, you can find it on Barnes & Noble, you can find it in Oxford, and you can also find it on Cheryl's websites, which are cancersurvivorsupport.com and CherylKrauter.com. That's Cheryl, KRAUTER.com. So, Cheryl, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being an AuthorStory. It was very insightful having you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate talking with you.
Cool. So if any of you listeners want to know more about this very important topic, feel free to go ahead and check out Surviving the Storm, which you can do so right now by going to the Amazon link in the description below the video. And if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. So bye for now, everyone. I'll be back on AuthorStory next time with another inspiring author.